Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place that is entirely dedicated to you, my flight simming brothers and sister. All I try to do around here is get you over those don't know what to do in the sim blues. I know how that feels. I know how awful it is. So what we try to do is find the coolest places in the world to fly over just to give you one more reason to get up in the air again and again. And I spend a day or two before we take you to these trips trying to learn as much as I can about what's going on the ground, just to fill in some of the details and gaps and make it all the more interesting as we go along. If you saw our last flight, which was up in Virginia, which was a fantastic flight. If you haven't seen it, you should go back and check that one out. Just wonderful. You heard me mention towards the end that I wanted to fly out here over the Middle East, over Israel and Gaza, to try to see what all this stuff that we've been hearing about on television looks like from the air, try to kind of get our bearings. It kind of all brings it a little bit closer to home when you know what they're talking about and where that stuff is spatially in the world. So we're up here in Tel Aviv. That's where we're going to start from, departing north from Ben Gurion Airport, Lima, Lima, Bravo, Golf. And we'll head about, 3 or 4 miles out to the north as we climb, and then turn west towards the coast as we check out the downtown area, because while we're here, why not do a little tour? And once we hit the Mediterranean, we'll cruise south along the coast until we reach the northern border of Gaza, which isn't all that far away, and then head inland just a bit to fly along the eastern Israel-Gaza border as we travel back down south again. And our destination is going to be a very special treat for you guys. It is the Yasser Arafat Airport, which was bombed into oblivion in 2001. And there's nothing there today except a big dirt outline of where it used to be. And it was the only airport in Gaza, but I have a freeware add-on for us that puts it back where it used to be, and it actually looks pretty cool too. And I've got a few other add-ons installed. All of those will be linked in the video description as usual. I'll tell you about the others once we get going here. And let's see, what else have I got to cover? Oh, well, what's right in front of us right now? Another special treat. If you saw our Baton Rouge flight, we took that little military trainer jet, but I was complaining all the way as we were taxiing out to the runway about this other little kit jet that I had, and this is what we're looking at here. This little tin can is the BD-5J from Azure Poly, and all the times I tried to fly this before, the first time I ever flew it, hold on, let me get started real quick because I'm not that great at multitasking. All right, get that going, and turn the pump on. And turn the fuel on, and we should get going. All of the other times I'd try to fly this, the graphical performance was terrible. I didn't know what was going on, because as you can see, it's a very, very basic plane, and I think this may have been the first plane from Azure Poly. I mean, it's very basic, but it was just killing the performance. I couldn't get my frame rate out of the teens. So I installed it, uninstalled it, reinstalled it, uninstalled it, took everything out of my community folder, wouldn't work. But I thought, man, if I could get this to work, if I can just say my prayers and cross my fingers, maybe just one more time, I'll get it to work. So I put it in for this flight, and as long as I don't adjust anything, it will work. So we'll see if it'll go okay for us this time. If I go out to adjust graphics or adjust volume or anything like that, the engine will shut off, and sometimes it would even crash the sim, so I'm not going to do that. We'll just leave it alone, fly it, and hopefully it'll be okay. It's very much like that little jet that we took out over West Virginia. Flies about the same. That one did have a fully functional autopilot. This one does not, but it will do the basic stuff, just a heading hold and vertical speed if you want to do that. Okay, I think it sounds like it's ready. So we'll turn the parking brake off and get going. Once we get turned around here, we're pretty close to the end of the runway. And what is just so crazy about these tiny little planes is that you really just feel like you're sitting right on the ground. And as you can see, just like that other one from West Virginia, these are wonderful for sightseeing. We'll get one hard freeze probably. So far, every test flight, once we get a few miles out from the airport, there's going to be a hard freeze. And other than that, hopefully everything will go okay. All right, we still have the smoke on. Let's turn that off. All right, and let's hide that thing. All right, we got our transponder on. And I need to remember to switch the fuel too. As if struggling with the performance issues wasn't enough, I ran out of gas on the last flight. And there are not a lot of YouTube videos of anyone flying this plane in the sim. There's plenty of them flying the real plane, which is quite cool if you want to check that out. So I figured if anyone's wondering what it looks like in the sim, since there isn't a lot of videos out there, well, now you know that too, assuming we can get it to work. And I don't want to make a don't buy it recommendation, because I hate to ever say something like that, especially after someone's put a lot of work into making a plane for the sim. And I always just assume that it's something I'm doing wrong, not the developers, which could definitely be the case here. But the struggles I've had with this, if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have bought it. If this was their first addition to the 2020 version of the sim, obviously they're cranking out some really nice planes now. Azure Poly is. It may just be one of their loss leaders, where it's just like, we're not gonna fix any issues with that. We're gonna focus on the stuff that's making us money, which may be what's going on, or again, maybe it's just me. All right, one notch of flaps, and let's do this. And if you saw our Holy Land flight, you may recall that the graphics out there in Jerusalem were almost as bad as Malta, which I saved you guys eyeballs by not even showing you that flight. And I was assuming it would be just as bad out here. And they're not great, but we're not flying out here to look at the graphics. This is for educational purposes only, and of course entertainment value. I hate to even say that considering what's going on here. But I was surprised by how well this looked compared to Jerusalem. So I've got several freeware add-ons installed. One of them was for a scenery mesh, one was for a vegetation fix, and then, let's see, I've got one Payware, which is the same one we had for Jerusalem, that Samsine pack, which wasn't really their best work either, but they didn't have much to work with, so I'm not faulting them for that, but I think it was like $10. So that fixed a lot of the buildings downtown, and the vegetation fix definitely helped. And there was something else I have in here too. Well, when you put them all in your community folder, and if you have the Samsine pack, put that in. If you don't have the Samsine pack, I imagine it's going to look very AI-ish, because if you look off to our right, you get AI World. And when we fly over Tel Aviv, downtown Tel Aviv, which is over there to our left, you'll see it looks pretty good. But the roads, as you can, and there's a $6 road pack for Israel and Iraq and maybe Lebanon too. As you can see, these roads look horrendous. But that may have fixed that if I really wanted to go all out. So I'm going to try to hand fly this thing. If I keep looking this way, it's because I have my little NavMap. And you could easily VFR fly this the whole way. Just get out over the city, turn towards the coast, and then head south. And you can't miss Gaza because it's a big wall. There's that freeze. And that was pretty short too. All right. Well, we've passed the first hurdle. But if I keep glancing this way, I'm going to act like I'm looking at scenery, but I may be looking at little NavMap. All right, so I will tell you anything relevant to what's going on with the disaster down here right now as we're flying over anything that has anything to do with it. But since we can't talk about that the whole time, because there's probably not enough to talk about, I'll also tell you some of the facts, figures, and history about this place. So that's Tel Aviv out there. And as I like to always do right out of the gate, tell you what I don't know. I was under the impression... See that AIville right there? That's an AI town. Looks like China. I thought that Tel Aviv was the capital of Israel up until fairly recently. Because you guys probably recall back in 2017, there was a big hoopla about the U.S. recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And so I thought nobody else had recognized it as the capital of Israel either. But Israel has recognized Jerusalem as its capital since 1950. And there's quite a few people, for reasons you can probably imagine, that are still not acknowledging that. But that was my first mistake. Tel Aviv has not been the capital of Israel almost since the statehood formed. And the second thing I was totally off base about is I thought Tel Aviv was a really, really old city. But this place didn't become official. Well, it was in 1909 is when it happened, and I was thinking like thousands of years old. But 1909 is when it was, I guess, what's the word for when a city becomes official? Founded? Not really founded, because there was stuff out here. But the old part is Jaffa, which is just south along the coast, and we'll fly over that, and I'll tell you about that when we get out there. So in the grand scheme of things, this area is pretty new. Alright, let's get the throttle up. Do I have the flaps all up? I feel like we're going a little bit slow. And I don't know what it is about this plane, but I feel like we're going a heck of a lot slower than 160 knots right now. And even when we get up to the max speed, our cruise speed today, which will be around 220, it still doesn't feel like we're just ripping along, but when I look over the little nav map, it says that's how fast we're going. I set the time of day to about 4, because as the sun goes down over the Mediterranean, it looks awesome. It looks really hazy out there now, but I kind of like the look of that too. It's obscuring the blurriness of anything on the ground. So the buildings themselves, as you can see, look okay, and downtown they're going to look great. But when you can see the ground, especially when you're closer, not great. But again, that's not what we're out here for. So this big green area up here is kind of like their equivalent of Central Park, I guess. And that's called Park Ha-Harkan. And on this end of it, we're going to see a rather strange-looking stadium called the Ramat Gan Stadium. And when I first saw it, I was like, well, geez, someone screwed up that. I don't know if it was the AI that was trying to build that or what, but it really looks as weird as it looks in here. We'll look at the satellite map at the end and you'll see. But it looks like there's buildings in the bleachers, and there are. And they're all different colors and stuff, so I don't know if that thing was put together piecemeal or what, but it really looks like that. And then right here is a little water park, which looks okay. You'll definitely be able to spot the wave pool, as always. And we will get quite a bit of popping in this too, so just brace yourself for that. For some reason, the performance with this plane is still not wonderful, and I have a lot of the graphics settings turned down, but at least it's flyable now. It was unflyable before when I was trying to do that Baton Rouge trip. Look at that stadium. Look how weird that is. But that's pretty much what it looks like, and there's the water park. And then this is Tel Aviv University right out here. But that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Really good. And all these little buildings down here, you can tell the ones they modified because they're slightly different color, some very different colors. And they got a lot of interesting architecture out there too. And this airport is no longer here, although you can select it in little NavMap in the sim. That was torn down in 2017 to make way for some residential stuff. And then this right here is the Reading power plant, which looks amazing. And I might have to start putting power plants up there with stadiums for default stuff in the sim, because all the ones we've been looking at lately look fantastic. Alright, I'm going to try to get to 3,000 feet, but this plane is so touchy. Alright, once we get on the other side of the sun, so we're not looking into it, we'll be able to see a lot more. Look at that power plant. Those are some big chimneys, aren't they? And this is their main beachfront area for Tel Aviv. And in real life, at the end of all these little pointy things here, they have these, they look a little bit T-shaped. There's some breakwaters that go on the ends of all these. You can't see them here in the sim. But then running right along here, they have a big promenade, and these are all hotels and restaurants and shops and stuff. So that's probably kind of the touristy district. And this thing here, if you look at it on the ground, is a really neat-looking architecturally art museum. But you can see they got some strange-looking buildings out there, don't they? Look at all these triangle-shaped ones, and they have quite a few of those, too. But that looks pretty good. And here's Old Jaffa here. And that place has been around for quite a while. The earliest that were... This is Bloomfield Stadium here, which also looks fantastic. And this little white church is called St. Peter's Church, and that is supposedly the spot where Peter had his vision of the sheet and the animals and all that stuff, if you're familiar with the New Testament, and also where he gave Tabitha a new lease on life. And that's pretty old. Who knows if that's the right spot or not, but that's where they say it is. Look at that stadium. That looks great. And on the satellite map, you really can't see that at all because it's looking right down on the top of it, but that's it. You won't miss it when you're flying in the sim. And I think that's a soccer stadium, that one that we looked at back there, as is everything else outside of the United States. And outside of being old, Jaffa has been conquered more often than we have time to discuss. Also the case with most of the stuff out here. Well, there's a little see-through building down there. That's a nice little touch. That's weird. Look at that thing. That first of those little white ones. Another triangle building. But if you can't see the ground, man, we're getting a lot of popping, aren't we? Well, we just got to take it. We got to take our licks. If you couldn't see the ground, it wouldn't look so bad. And this is the only amusement park we'll see out here. This is called Superland. Let's fly over there and just take a look at it, since we can. This is a fully aerobatic plane, so we can do whatever the heck we want in here. Got some nice cranes that look okay. And believe it or not, despite how flat everything else around here is, all the landscape, you can even see some elevation with a little roller coaster they have out here. And they got an amphitheater, also totally flat. This is a soccer stadium, flat. But for some reason, they gave us the pleasure of seeing a little tiny bit of elevation with some of the amusement park rides down there. That's it. So if you want to throw up in Tel Aviv, that's where you go. Alright, let's get back out this way because we've got to check out this strip up here along the coast. So when Hamas was launching all their rockets last weekend, they did get some all the way up here into Tel Aviv. And we're about 35 miles out from the border right now. And the furthest south the rockets landed was Ashdod, which is where this port is up here. And everything from this way down to Gaza is where the ground invasion was from Gaza and Hamas. So this is Palmachim Air Base right here. And I did say that correctly because I watched someone say it on the internet, assuming they said it correctly. And this was opened up in 1988 and houses mostly Black Hawk and drone squadrons. And they've also got some launch pads down there, and every few years they'll send up a satellite. Although I couldn't find the launch pads. It wasn't like flying over the Kennedy Space Center where it's very obvious where those are. But what I thought was most interesting about this is where they keep their anti-ballistic missile batteries. And what they're using for those today are the Arrow family of missiles, which replace the apparently less effective Patriot missiles, which you'll all recall from the Gulf conflicts. shooting down all those scuds. And those arrows are currently considered the most advanced in the world at doing what they do. And those are not the ones that are part of the Iron Dome system. I'm sure you guys have seen those videos now. These are the ones that go really high, really fast to catch orbital inbounds. Or suborbital, I guess. And I think the battery for those is out around this area here. And I couldn't really see them in the sim, but when we see it on the satellite map at the end, there's a bunch of little walled-off squared areas, and I think that's where they keep those. And they look like the Patriot batteries, which looks kind of like a container, like a semi-container popped up on its end. So they must have 4 of them in each of those. But apparently they're pretty advanced. Alright, this big port up here lets us know we've arrived at Ashdod, home to the largest port in Israel, which receives 60% of the country's imports. And this one's going to deliver us an odd mix of precision and oversights. There's this huge dark spot is where they're currently building a new section of the port. And if you look real close down in there, you'll even see some little cranes. So I don't know what happened with that, but if you look over here, these loading cranes look phenomenal. And if that's default, that is some pretty good default work. So Samsung may have touched that stuff up too. And they even gave us a few default transport ships, so that's nice. We should see a lot of popping. There it is. Bring out those containers quick. Someone's flying over. Show them we're busy down here. Here they all come. Ooh, and a cruise ship. Look at that. I didn't notice that before. Thank you very much. So this is the furthest south that the rocket barrage was coming into here. And they found some Neolithic tools down here, but they think they probably weren't from around here because they found nothing else but the stone tools. So they think someone at some point had brought them up here and just dropped them on the ground, which is weird. But this place is about as old as Jaffa, they're sure of that. About 1800 BC, as it was the first of 5 major Philistine city-states we'll see on this flight. Mentioned no less than 13 times in the Hebrew Bible. And we might be able to see the ruins of an old fort down here called Ashad Yam. And it's right along the shoreline, but it's just basically walls now, and it's not nearly as old as the town itself. I think it was from sometime in the first millennium, maybe 700 or 800 AD. And on the satellite map, they've got like a palm-looking, the little harbor in here. The docks for the boats kind of form a little palm shape with branches coming off, but it's sunk into the water, unfortunately. So here's that little fort is, and I can't believe something that old hasn't been washed away by now. That's where it would be right there, and you'll be able to see that on the satellite map too. Alright, this next major population center right up here is called Ashkelon. And this was the furthest north the Hamas ground troops came when they invaded last week. And it's about 6 miles north of the border, if you're wondering about the proximity. And the border, which you won't miss when we get down there, is just a little south of these towers down here, of those chimneys. And this will make number 2 of the 5 Philistine city-states, with Gaza being the 3rd and final one we'll fly over today. But this was the site of the largest seaport in the ancient world for Israel, or what would become Israel. And it's seen its share of civilizations come and go over the years, among them... Okay, I gotta take a deep breath. Ready? Egyptians, Canaanites, Philistines, Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, Persians, Arabs, and the Crusaders. And that's just getting through ancient times. And various bits of evidence from all of those guys have been unearthed from their archaeological complex, which is this big green area down here. They're doing a lot of archaeological digs out there. And as a dark historical footnote, in 1986 they found the ruins of a 4th century bathhouse down in this area here. And they've theorized it may have been a house of ill repute after they discovered roughly 100 infant skeletons in the sewer system underneath the bathhouse. And they think that that may have been where the prostitutes were discarding their unwanted children, which is pretty dark. Sorry to be shaking the plane over all the place like this, but if I just barely touch my stick, it's just... which is probably pretty true to life for a plane that goes this fast, that's this light. Let's give it a little more throttle. We got a little bit of bandwidth there. And I can't believe I've been able to hold this around 3,000 feet, and I'm even more shocked that we haven't had any issues. And you're going to love these smokestacks down here. They've got the little aircraft lights on them, and they're actually flashing. Just looks really cool. I bet at night it would look awesome, but if I try to turn the sun down, then It'd probably crash the sim. And they've even got like a little oil terminal thing coming out here, which seems like an odd level of detail for way out here, but they put it in there. And from the actual map, this looks like a pile of coal, so I'm guessing that's a coal plant, even though they have trees growing out of it now. But you can see they've got all of these oil containers out here. So I'm guessing the tankers will pull up to this thing, and that's probably a separate facility from this. But this little power plant, like all the rest of them, is going to look real nice. Let's get a little closer so you can really check out those lights flashing. See them? See them flashing there? That's great. And you'd think they'd put those on all of those things because you know all of them have them, at least up at the top. But I can't recall seeing them on any of our flights so far. Not that I've really been looking that hard. But that's a nice little touch. Alright, all these little... This is the border right here of Gaza, and you'll have no problem seeing it because there's a wall going all the way around it. But all these little circular things out here are little communities called the kibbutzes, which you've probably heard a lot about. Because all of these around the border, so it's going to stretch down this way, were invaded by Hamas when they came in and did their thing. And I'll tell you more about those in a minute because I'd never even heard that word until last week. And once I looked into it, I was pretty interested in the story behind those places, so I'll tell you all about it after we look at something else up here that you got to see. So it looks like, although there's not any relief to it in the sim, they may have a double wall going all the way around this, which would probably make sense. But then right up here, you see this thing right here? It's a very obviously elevated wall, and if you've seen the video footage of the guys ramming the wall down with a bulldozer, that's where this was, right here. That happened right here. And as you can see, the border wall goes out this way, and then this thing just sticks into Gaza like this. So I'm not sure what the purpose of that was, but it was obviously some kind of obstacle because they were putting a lot of effort into bringing that down, but that's where that was. And this is called Checkpoint Erez, and there's a one on the southern end of Gaza as well. And I think those are the only two ways in and out of this area. So here's a kibbutz out here. That looks like a little bit more of a city, but we'll see some that are just these little pockets of residential areas here. And once we turn to the south, I'll look out my right window so you can see Gaza, which looks incredibly good for some reason. This here doesn't look all that great, but the residential areas in Gaza look really, really good. Look at that thing. What do you think the purpose of that is? If you know, let us know. Really strange. Alright, let's start taking our southerly turn here. But look at that down there. Looks fantastic. So the kibbutzes are, well, historically, they were little walled-off, self-contained, self-supporting communities that, if it didn't have so much baggage to say it, were kind of socialism-based, where everybody that lived within them, no matter what they did for a living or how much they earned, would throw all their income into a pot, and then it would be used for the good of the community, which is highly offensive to us capitalist Americans. Can't even imagine living somewhere like that. But the part of it that I found somewhat redeeming was a big part of living in one of those is they kind of communally take care of the kids, raising them, teaching them, caring for them, protecting them. At least that's how it used to work. There's another one right there. And they said in more modern times, most of them have become what we'd probably call a subdivision here in the U.S. these days. But they said they're still very tight-knit communities, and you can see how close those are to the border. I mean, it was a couple hundred yards, maybe. There's another one out here. And the Supernova Music Festival, which we've all heard about now. So here's one, and then here's another. Somewhere in between the two of these is where that festival was going on out in the desert. So that's where that was. But when reading about those kibbutzes, it kind of reminded me back, as you guys know, I'm almost 50 now. I'm 47, just turned 47. But when I was growing up in Connecticut, we lived in a neighborhood, and this was back, of course, in the 80s when people didn't move every 3 years, but everyone that lived around us had been there forever. And even though we weren't thrilled with all of our neighbors, everybody knew that everyone had each other's backs. It was one of those times where you didn't have to lock the houses up at night. Everyone took care of everyone's kids. It was, growing up in that environment, a nice sense of security. All right, there's my fuel light, so let's take care of that before I run out of gas again. Now look how good that looks. Even the fields and everything, they look good again here, where they didn't look great up by Tel Aviv. So I don't know why they did such a nice job here, but they certainly did. It looks fantastic. And you've probably noticed I have stayed as far as I possibly can away from any kind of political commentary about what's going on down here. And I don't know what the heck has happened since COVID, but the information pipeline for the world has somehow gotten a kink in it, and it is now, as you probably know, severely broken. The amount of conflicting information, conflicting opinions you get about all this stuff. Obviously, whatever's going on is horrible for everybody involved, but good grief. I mean, there's 4 or 5 news sites I go to when I feel strong enough to check the news on any given day. And I just kind of take the average information from all of them because I don't fully trust any of them. What kind of world have we built for ourselves? I mean, nobody trusts the police, the government, the institutions, the doctors, the scientists. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. I'm wondering how this is all going to shake out. But that can't be good for a society when no one trusts the people that we used to rely on for reliable information back in the day. Yeah, but Gaza is a rough place to live. As you can see, it's not very big. It's only 6 miles wide at the widest point. You can see our runway up there. And I think it's about 20 miles long, which is about less than a quarter the size of Jacksonville, which is where I live now. But they've got over 2 million people down here, making it one of the most densely populated places in the world. And they have one of the worst employment rates in the world at around 50%, putting the average per capita income at just over $3,000 a year in 2009, and it's probably even worse than that now. Right, I'm trying to get myself lined up with that runway here. And we'll start slowing down some. Slowing way down. And one of the main causes, of course, for strife down here is that they've been under a blockade from Israel and Gaza, and they're living under the rule of the Hamas government. I think that started in 2007, which has not been good for anyone living down here. And I read that the average age is like 22 or something, really young. So I don't know if that's because of a life expectancy issue, which it probably is, since everybody's starving and the hospital situation's terrible. So if you get any kind of illness, your chances are probably not that great of making it through it. But it is a rough situation down here. Alright, so let's keep on slowing down. And at the end, of course, I'll pull over a little NavMap. We'll take a quick look at everything that we saw. Let's take another look at that sunset. That's fantastic. Yeah, so weird that Gaza would be done up so nice. I mean, this doesn't look AI at all. This looks really good. And Tel Aviv, terrible. Jerusalem was just as bad. And if you guys are interested, that Jerusalem flight was one of the first ones we did in our earliest videos. Of course, you got to scroll way down to see them. Don't get as many views, but if you're into that kind of stuff, I really enjoyed that flight. If you're familiar with the Bible at all, it's kind of interesting to see where all that stuff is, whether you're a Christian or not, just kind of getting all the landmarks. I had no idea how close and or how far away some of that stuff was from downtown Jerusalem. And of course, we had all the big archaeological sites and all that. And of course, I deliver all kinds of interesting facts about all that stuff. This is beautiful. Really, really nice. Good grief. So strange. I wonder what goes into the sim figuring out... I mean, surely the developers aren't going in here and just handpicking every area they want to do up nice like this, but there seems to be no rhyme or reason, with the exception of China. I think they just said, screw that. That's AI all the way. But places like Malta, as I said before, horrible. That should have been one that would have been on a hit list, you'd think, for someone to do up. And then Gaza, of all places. Look how good this looks. Crazy. Alright, let's keep slowing down. Gotta get these gears out. I cannot believe we've had no issues with this plane, and I am just delighted to report that. Just delighted. And the guys that designed the this airport, which again is freeware, said they had a lot of trouble with it because there aren't that many pictures of it. Of course, it doesn't exist now. There's nothing down here except the big bare spot that you'll see on the satellite map. So I think they kind of did a little bit of guessing, but as you'll see when we pull up to the gate there, or where the gate should be, I don't think they even have a gate. There's just a hangar. We'll pull over by that, but they added some nice little details down there, some ground vehicles. So it looks pretty cool. All right, I think we're probably safe for gears. Let's do that. And we don't have any landing lights or taxi lights, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm just hoping they don't think we're a drone and shoot us out of the sky. I hope that smoke really did turn off. And if you want to fly ILS the other direction, There's ILS on all 3 of the runways, both ways, except for one of them. The one that we left from, if you're coming into land the way that we left, that one's the only one that didn't have an ILS signal on that one. So if you want to go the other way and you feel like landing ILS, there are plenty of choices for how you want to do that. All right, we can pick up the pace just a little bit, throw out our final notch of flaps. Come on in here. So I think for our next flight, I'm going to buy that new Builds boat plane. I don't think it's amphibious, so I'm just going to call it a boat plane. And it is a wild looking plane, but we'll have to find a spot where we can do a water takeoff and a water landing to fly that thing. And as always, keep the recommendations coming. That Virginia flight that we just did was a viewer recommendation, so thank you for that. I can only fly over so much of the world myself, so if you know of a place that you like flying over, and even if we don't do a flight, if it's a cool place, I'll just mention it in case you guys want to check it out. Don't be afraid to let me know. And I'm a nice guy. Just say hi in the comments if you want to. Past few weeks, I've got to meet a lot of new people to the channel, and that's been fantastic. Alright, this thing likes to float too, and you really need to feel like you're dragging your butt on the runway because you're a lot higher than you think you are. And the pappies say we're high, so I've got a little bit of a problem here, but we got a long runway. I'm just going to cut the throttle. So just on the other side of this border is Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. If we kept going straight here, that's where we'd wind up. Alright, we're probably still 10 feet off the ground. Floating. Come on. I've got the throttle at idle. There we go. Ooh, there we go. Alright, alright, get her down. Get her down. Flaps up. Alright, do we have a turn off? I'm just going to turn around because I think the next taxiway is a little bit further down, but I want to show you this airport. There we go. Perfect. Man, we're not even having any frame rate issues. The only stuttering I saw was when we left that other airport. Not bad. Got a little bit of popping, but all in all, not bad at all. So if you want to take this flight, just throw everything that I got in the description in your community folder. If you want the buildings in Tel Aviv to look as they did, you'll need that Samsung pack. And if you're planning on ever going out and checking out Jerusalem, you want to get that anyway, so I think it was about $10. Not a big deal. Look, they got some luggage loaders out there, a couple cranes. Not too bad. Let's come over. Yeah, we'll just park over here. Boy, I bet they put something big in that place. Oh, we even got a little guy down there. We're not going to drive that far over there. Alright, we'll just stop right here. Alright, parking brake on. And let's shut everything down. The smoke's already off, hopefully. And fuel pump off. And we'll just cut the fuel. And we'll go ahead and open the canopy. Ooh, it sounds like the volume level even changes. So that's a nice touch for such a basic plane. Alright, here we are. And let's see here. Take the centering off. So, since this runway does not exist in little NavMap, I had to fly out past it. So if you load up this flight plan, there's the runway it's going to go to because there was nothing to select here, although they do have a VOR station. But if we get close, there's where the airport used to be. And that's what it looks like now. But you can, again, you can select it in the sim once you add the add-on. So you have to put the add-on in there or you will not see. That is an option in the sim. All right, so here's where we took off from, Ben Gurion. And just to kind of let you know where we're at, so here's the Dead Sea out here, here's the Sea of Galilee, and all these bookmarks are from the Jerusalem flight, and the flight that I never took, which was that Sea of Galilee flight. And we'll zoom back in here and look at some of the stuff that we saw. So here's downtown Tel Aviv, and here's that crazy stadium. Look at this thing. The only thing that was really off in the sim is they put a big rectangular building here. But all this stuff was right, and all the different colors and everything. And there's our water park with a wave pool. That actually looked pretty close to real, too. So that wasn't too bad. And here's Tel Aviv University out here. And then here's the airport that is no longer there in real life. But again, if for some reason you want to take off from there or land there, you can do it in the little NavMap and the sim. And then here's the Reading Power Station, which looked amazing. And they had 2 smokestacks, I think, in the sim. So we got a little bonus for that one. And then here's those breakwaters that you couldn't see in the sim. And here's their big beach. And going all along here is that little promenade boardwalk. And, of course, all the hotels and everything. There's the Bloomfield Stadium, which looked fantastic in the sim. And here's Old Jaffa, and there's the Church of St. Peter, which you can tell doesn't look great here, but looked very good and was easy to spot in the sim. So you can check that out if you want to. And that's my marker for Jaffa. And there's a little art museum that was cool too, but I can't remember where that was. You can see that in the sim as well. And there's Superland. There it is. We could actually see that little roller coaster. Fantastic. Little amphitheater was flat, but it doesn't look like that has much elevation anyway. And the soccer field, you could tell it was a field, but I don't think there was any elevation with that either. And this must be a hotel. I bet that's what that is. For everyone just wanting to play soccer and go to Superland. All right, and here is the air base. And I was looking really hard to see if I could see where they launched the bigger stuff, which would have been the satellite rockets. But again, I couldn't see anything like that. But here's where I think the Arrow missile batteries probably are. What do you guys think? That looks definitely not launching satellites out of there because they wouldn't have walls around the side of it. Those things would be blown right out. But I'm betting that's where the batteries for that are. So that's that. And here's the port of Ashdod. And here's the thing that should have been in the sim, but it was just a big dark spot that had the little crane sticking out of it. And there's where our cruise ship was. And it looks like they do have some... No, that's not a pleasure boat. I don't know what that is, but they put a cruise ship down there. And then we had a couple tankers sitting out here, so that was cool. Got a little popping with that, but all in all, looked okay. And look at this thing here. There's that harbor I was talking about. That's what it looks like in real life. It was just completely open in the sim, but that's where that was. And then here's the Ashdod Yam Fort, which just looked like a little dark patch in the sim. But look how close that is to the water. How could something over 1,000 years old manage to stand being that close to the water? Which tells me they probably don't have a lot of weather issues out here. So the rockets were coming all the way from here up to Tel Aviv and then down here to Ashdod. That's where the rockets were. And then the Hamas land invasion went all the way up here to Ashkelon. And then they were hitting all these kibbutz out here. There's one there. There's one here. And here's where the music festival was. And I don't know exactly where it was because I couldn't really pin it down on the map. But it was somewhere between Be'eri and Ra'im. Somewhere between these two. And I flew over and circled it. There was nothing that looked like a festival ground, so I don't know where exactly that is. And then here's that, before I get too far away from it, there's that checkpoint. Again, can't really figure out what that's all about. Seems really strange that they would have that wall going there like that. Because you'd think if they were trying to protect people that were waiting to get through, they would have put something on both sides of that road, but it's not. It's just on that side. So let me know if you know what that's all about. And here's Gaza City, which looked amazing. Really, really good. And there is one little amusement park out here somewhere, but it's not what we would call amusement park. It's one of those foot-powered places where you got some swings, a merry-go-round, maybe some seesaws, probably all the old school stuff, but it's not like a traditional amusement park. And then we came out for our approach and landing. So that's it. And this is Egypt down here, so just to kind of let you know where we're at, there's the Sinai Peninsula there. And then here's the other place. The only other place to get in or out is this checkpoint right here. Unless you cut the wire and bulldoze it through, which apparently they were able to do without much issue. So that's that. Hopefully that'll be a little bit helpful for you guys. Next time you turn the news on and you hear about some of these towns, you probably will. And this whole area here now has been evacuated by Israel. So they moved all the Israeli citizens out as they get ready for their ground invasion. But I saw a little map where they'd kind of drawn out all these kibbutzes here have been evacuated. So as they get ready for that, those people have been cleared out. And that's that, guys. Thanks for joining me. Sorry it was over such a somber occasion, but I found that helpful for me. Hopefully you guys will feel the same way. Can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.